Welcome to Ben Plays Godtear. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about why I started this channel, what makes Godtear such an amazing game, and why you should probably be playing it too. So before we get into that, let's talk really briefly about what is Godtear. Godtear is a hex-based tabletop skirmish war game. So in this game, you have a game board and players control multiple miniatures kind of battling for dominance. You can think of it very similar to like an asymmetrical chess, where each player has different pieces or miniatures. And these pieces have different characteristics. They've got different abilities, kind of benefits and detriments. And one of the reasons that I really enjoy tabletop wargaming is just the amazing depth of play. Because you have all of these different permutations of which pieces are being brought to the game, there's a lot of replayability and there's a lot of tactical depth and interest to playing these games. And I think that Godtear has some very unique characteristics that makes it rise as kind of the cream of the crop in this space. So let's talk about why Godtear. Why spend time on a channel like this, and why would people want to be playing this game over the plethora of other alternatives that are out there? And I'll break it down really into 4 key areas. I think Godtear is one of the most simple to learn systems for tabletop wargaming. But just because it's simple doesn't mean that it is easy. This game is very hard to master. There is a real depth. And so this type of simple to learn, hard to master kind of characteristic allows it to target a very wide audience of individuals that will enjoy the game. I also think that comparatively to a lot of other tabletop war games, it has a very low barrier for entry. And the rules, the system, kind of everything about the game uniquely maximizes what I consider the funnest elements of war games, while also trying to prune out the areas that are a little bit more friction, time-consuming, or less fun. And kind of the 4th reason I think Godtear is so amazing is just the community. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get on, but having a gaming community that is open and engaging to new players, having a game producer in Steamforged Games that supports the game and is supporting the community and is so open really helps to make this a very approachable and an enjoyable game to play. So let's dig a little bit into that statement, simple to learn, hard to master. I have 2 daughters, and it is of huge benefit when my hobbies can kind of correspond with theirs, because now we can be playing the things that we all find fun, spending time together. And so I taught my 8-year-old daughter in one night how to play Godtear. And so this is a picture from one of our games. We were kind of attempting a 3-player game, which not recommended, but was very fun to try. The rulebook itself is very small. I think it's about 30 pages, but most of those are huge diagrams to make it really easy to follow. I think that if you're experienced with gaming in 5 minutes or less, 10 minutes, you could easily read through the entire rulebook and be ready to start to play. And part of the reason for that is it has such a simple and elegant rule system. I've played a very large number of war games, a lot of board games, a lot of kind of computer games as well. And one of the things that always draws me is when there is a very small surface area to the rules. And Steamforged Games did such an amazing job with this rules, and this is hands down the best rules system I've ever encountered for any type of game. And just because it's simple doesn't mean that it lacks for that incredible tactical depth. It allows you to find synergies, to find counterplay, and that kind of small surface area allows you to build the tools that you need to make some of these kind of deeper, more tactical decisions without hampering with needing rote memorization or being really familiar with every aspect about the game. You can jump right in and start to play at that incredible tactical level. It also has just astounding replayability. At the time of this video recording, there's dozens of champions. You play in a 3v3 scenario most typically, and a three champions versus 3 champions. Each champion has their own set of followers. And so all those different permutations, there's thousands upon thousands of permutations for what champions come to a table, and there's also different scenarios. So with all that variability, there's a lot of room for exploration, and a lot of replayability with this game. So talking really quickly about low barrier of entry, you can start with 2 champions versus 2 champions. It's definitely, I think, once you get your feet underneath you and have played through 1, maybe 2 games, I highly recommend 3 versus 3. That's really where the balance and a lot of the intrigue for the game comes from. And starting at a 2 champion versus 2 champion, that's about a 50-person investment if you buy the starter box, which is, not inexpensive, but again, for the amount of replayability that you get, and especially compared to a lot of other war games, that's pretty approachable. They also have a free to try option on Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator, and that's a really, really great way. You can hop into the Discord, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and just try the game out, see if it's something that you like before you really want to get involved. As part of that, the warbands themselves are factionless. So with that investment, you're getting warbands that you'll be able to use in any combination with future purchases that you make, and that have very unique play styles. And so rather than having a very high cost to get started with a game and then really being locked into one style of play, the kind of champion system that Steamforged Games uses with this game allows you to have a lot of freedom at very minimal initial investments. You can play this game on a kitchen table. It comes right with the game board. It uses hex-based movements. There's no need to do measurements, right? Which was one of the things that I was really looking for, because that seems to be a barrier for my friends that were a little bit more casual players, my daughters. It adds a lot of time to the game. So being able to look at a board and understand that movement, I think, really helped to lower the barrier. And the fact that you don't really need any additional terrain like you would with typical or alternative tabletop war games really means that everything that you need comes pre-assembled in a starter box, ready to paint if you like to paint miniatures or play right out of the box, and that lets you get started with the fun right away after your first purchase. Another huge aspect of why I love this game, why I think it's so great, is what I call fun density. So all games have a certain amount of fun and unfun aspects of them. Unfun aspects, may be having to play out after you've definitely lost a game. It may be very time-consuming tracking. And I think that Steamforged Games did a better job with this than I've ever seen in anything before at having the highest possible fun density for a game. Again, hex-based movement alleviates a lot of the time and debate on miniatures that would be needed to be measured. So you don't need to argue about whether they were bumped, how far it is. It's a lot faster to look at a game board and know exactly how movement can play out. Another thing that's unique about this as a war game is that when units are knocked out, they have mechanics for being restored. And so this will use up some of your action economy. It definitely puts you at a detriment, but it allows you to kind of reclaim those units that may be your favorites that have fallen and continue the game in a way that I think is a really fun kind of twist on miniature games. It also really limits the snowball or death spiral losses that can occur in more high variance games. The turn structure is just an ingenious design where it's kind of got a little bit of a rubber band mechanism. So in the game there are 5 turns, and each turn has 3 different phases. And if I lose a turn, then I get a little bit more control than my opponent on setting up for the next turn. And each turn is scored independently of the other turns. So just because you had a really bad first turn or really bad first 2 turns doesn't mean that you're completely out of the game. This really helps with maintaining engagement, making the game kind of fun and interesting, regardless on how the dice have been rolled or how you've played kind of starting out. I also think this game finishes at the climax. The entire game feels like it's constantly building, and you very rarely need to play something out where there isn't really a chance for you to win. There isn't much reason to put your all into it. Everything kind of adds in this desire to find the most optimal plays. I also think that this game is very uniquely fun to lose. It's the first game where I have had more fun losing in games than I have in playing a lot of other different tabletop games, because of how this climax, it builds to this climax, and because of how many unique decisions there are, and that there's such high fun density, you don't really need to play through those feel bad moments. I also think that this game really appeals to a wide audience. You can play with casual gamer friends, you can nerd out with math crafters, looking at optimal, attack chances, damage chances. You can get really sweaty in the competitive scene. This has a very deep, we've talked about kind of the depth of play, and that leads to a very competitive option for playing. And so having that much option for who you're playing with, how you're playing, I think hopefully allows this game to be played with and introduced to a lot of different people. Lastly, I really think that something that's unique about this game is how amazing the community is. It's got a very, very welcoming community. If you join the Discord, people are always willing to run you through how to use the tabletop simulator if you want to play virtually, talk about rules, questions, just give general guidance on how to start learning. I think that the amount of engagement in that Discord server is unrivaled in my experience. There's community-run tournaments that are also kind of coordinated through that Discord, which makes for a very fun experience when you can't necessarily get to in-person gaming very often. There's also this culture of sharing and teaching, and this to me is something that was really important, because if a game is more about winning and holding strategies kind of close to your chest, and then I think that it's a lot less fun in general, and specifically for me too, when the culture instead is how can I make the people around me better, and they'll push me to be better myself. I think that leads to a much healthier overall ecosystem, and that's something that's definitely true of the Godtear community. I also really appreciate the active publisher support from Steamforged Games. They have all of their resources, all of their playing cards published on their blog, so you can go and peruse them. You can look at what all of the heroes do. They have members of the company that participate in Discord. It was really great. I was asking some questions and got to talk to the lead designer of the game, which is not something that you would typically be able to do. They also are very actively engaging the community in a multitude of ways. One way is with community surveys, and really wanting to hear how the community is interpreting the work that they're doing. And I think that type of bidirectional feedback can only bode well for a gaming system. They also leverage the community to beta test new things. I got to play on a brand new map that hasn't been released yet called Construction, or a brand new scenario, and be able to provide some feedback through the form that they provide. And that was really, really fun to kind of participate in that game evolution process, or as the kind of game progresses. So those are just a few things that I love about this game. I really want to see it grow, which is the main reason that I kind of started this channel, having access to how other people are experiencing the game, how they're learning. Hopefully will kind of lower that barrier of entry for others. But I would love to hear in the comments what you like the most about Godtear. Why do you play it? What interests you if you aren't playing it yet? As always, if you can help with the algorithm, if you like this style of content, like and subscribe. That helps others find the videos on this channel. And until next time, have fun and roll well. Bye, guys.